The warning. In a dimly lit chamber on the planet Elysium, a group of young alien children gathered, their large, luminous eyes reflecting the faint glow of the central light. They sat cross-legged on the cool stone floor, their attention fixed on an elder who stood before them. His skin shimmered with hues of green and blue, reminiscent of the vibrant flora that flourished outside. This was no ordinary story time. It was a moment steeped in gravity and foreboding. The elder's voice was low and resonant, carrying the weight of centuries as he began to recount tales that had been passed down through generations. "Hear this, little ones," he began, his tone grave. "There are beings among the stars whose very presence can reshape worlds. They are known as humans." As he spoke, images danced in the children's minds, visions of colossal ships tearing through the cosmos like leviathans of old, leaving trails of destruction in their wake. The elder described them as metallic creatures wreathed in fire, unstoppable forces that devoured everything in their path. "Humans bring storms," he warned, his voice trembling slightly with urgency. "Storms that cannot be predicted or controlled." The children listened intently, their imaginations ignited by fear and fascination. They could almost hear the thunderous roar of human ships as they tore through space, ripping apart planets with reckless abandon. The elder's words painted a vivid picture, a grim reality that could one day dawn upon them. "Imagine, little ones," he continued, "a force that does not bow to the laws of our universe. Humans do not merely visit, they conquer." His gaze swept across the room, locking onto each child's eyes as if to etch his warning into their very souls. When they set their sights on something, they do not let go. A palpable tension filled the air, thickening like fog around them. The children's sensitive senses picked up on an anxiety that seeped through the elder's words, a foreboding sense that an encounter with these beings could lead to calamity. "When humans come," he added, his voice dropping to a whisper, "there is a scent of something burning, a harbinger of change." The children shivered at this notion. They imagined an acrid odor wafting through their world as humanity's influence began to reshape it irrevocably. It was not just a story but a survival guide, an essential lesson etched into their minds to prepare them for an inevitable storm on the horizon. "Listen closely," urged the elder, his eyes wide with intensity. "Humans are dangerous. Never underestimate them." He paused for effect, as if weighing his next words carefully. "They do not tire. They do not falter." His voice grew somber as he continued. "When they arrive, it is not a peaceful visit. It is a struggle for survival." The room seemed to vibrate with his words, a low hum of tension wrapping around the young minds like a constricting serpent. Each child exchanged glances filled with trepidation and curiosity. They were being handed a burden, a knowledge that could one day mean the difference between survival and oblivion. "Remember this," concluded the elder, his voice steady yet heavy with sorrow. "Humans are not like us. They are architects of change and sculptors of destinies." He paused again before adding gravely, "When they come, stand strong. Stay alert and be ready for chaos, because only in such turmoil will you find your path." As he finished speaking, silence enveloped them like a shroud. The dimly lit room became a sanctuary filled with shared fear. Shadows danced on walls adorned with ancient symbols that told stories long forgotten by time itself. In that moment, each child felt an awakening within, a flicker of resolve ignited by cautionary tales woven into their consciousness. They were no longer just innocent beings playing under Elysium's twin suns. They were now guardians of knowledge that could shape their future. The elders' stories lingered in their minds like echoes reverberating through time, a reminder that understanding one's enemies was crucial for survival in an ever-changing universe. As night fell over Elysium and stars twinkled above like distant diamonds scattered across velvet darkness, each child knew deep down that their lives would never be quite the same again. With hearts heavy yet hopeful, they left the chamber one by one, minds buzzing with thoughts about humanity's potential wrath and what it meant for their world ahead. The arrival. The tranquil planet of Elysium lay bathed in the soft glow of its twin suns, casting a serene light over the lush landscapes. The vibrant colors of the flora danced gently in the breeze, creating a picturesque scene that belied the tension brewing beneath the surface. The alien children, still haunted by the Elder's warning, roamed the fields but felt an unsettling shift in the atmosphere. An electric charge hung in the air, whispering of change. A disturbance in the air. One day, while playing near a shimmering lake, a sudden tremor rippled through the ground. The children paused, exchanging nervous glances as they felt the vibrations beneath their feet. It was as if the planet itself was warning them of an impending storm. They rushed back to their community, hearts racing with both fear and excitement. As they gathered in the central chamber, their elder stood waiting, his expression grave. "Little ones," he began, his voice steady yet filled with urgency. "We have sensed a disturbance, a signal from beyond our stars." The children leaned in closer, their wide eyes reflecting both curiosity and dread. "The humans," he continued, "are approaching." His words hung in the air like a dark cloud, and the room fell silent as each child absorbed the weight of this revelation. They had heard tales of humans before, beings who brought chaos and destruction, but now those stories felt all too real. Preparing for impact. The elder wasted no time. "We must prepare ourselves," he instructed. "Gather your families and share what you know. We need to be united." The children nodded, their minds racing as they thought of what lay ahead. They scurried off to find their parents, hearts pounding with a mix of fear and determination. As news spread through the community, a palpable tension filled the air. Families gathered in small groups, discussing strategies and sharing stories about what they had learned from the elder. The children listened intently as their parents recounted encounters with other species, how they had survived through unity and courage. In hushed tones, they spoke of past battles fought against invaders who sought to claim their world. Each story served as both a warning and an inspiration. They were reminded that strength lay not just in numbers, but in their shared resolve to protect their home. The gathering storm. Days turned into nights as preparations escalated. The once peaceful fields were transformed into training grounds where young and old alike practiced defensive maneuvers and strategized how to confront potential threats. They fashioned makeshift weapons from natural resources, sharp stones, and sturdy branches, each child eager to contribute to their community's defense. Despite their efforts, anxiety lingered like a shadow over Elysium. The elder sensed it too. He could feel it in the way the wind howled through the trees and how the animals grew restless. "We must remain vigilant," he reminded them during gatherings. "Humans are not just visitors. They come with intentions that can alter our very existence." As days passed, strange lights appeared on the horizon, glimmers that pierced through the twilight like stars falling from the sky. The children watched with bated breath as these lights grew brighter and closer. It was both mesmerizing and terrifying. They knew that this was no ordinary phenomenon. First glimpses of humanity. One evening, as dusk settled over Elysium, a loud roar shattered the stillness of night, a sound unlike anything they had ever heard before. The ground trembled beneath them once more as shadows loomed overhead. The children rushed outside to witness a colossal ship descending from the heavens, a metallic behemoth that blocked out the stars. Gasps filled the air as families emerged from their homes to witness this momentous occasion. The elder stood at the forefront, his expression a mixture of awe and dread. "This is it," he murmured under his breath. "The moment we have feared." The ship landed with a thunderous thud, sending tremors through the ground that rattled even the bravest hearts among them. As dust settled around them, figures began to emerge from within. The humans had arrived. Initial encounters. The first humans stepped onto Elysium's soil clad in strange garments that shimmered under its twin suns. Their faces were obscured by visors that glinted ominously in the light. As they moved forward cautiously, whispers rippled through the crowd of aliens who had gathered to witness this historic encounter. The elder raised his hand for silence, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Remember what we have learned, he urged his people. Stay calm and observe. The children clung to each other tightly as they watched this new chapter unfold before their eyes. The humans began scanning their surroundings with devices that emitted soft beeps and flashes of light, a stark contrast to Elysium's natural beauty. One human stepped forward, raising an arm in what appeared to be a gesture of peace. He spoke words that echoed across the field, but were lost on alien ears. Communication would be their first challenge. A moment of tension. As silence enveloped them once more, an alien child named Lyra took a bold step forward despite her fear. She felt an inexplicable urge to bridge this gap between worlds, a desire to understand these beings who had come from beyond her imagination. With trembling hands but unwavering resolve, Lyra pointed toward her heart and then toward one of the humans, a gesture meant to convey peace and curiosity. The human paused, tilting his head slightly as if trying to decipher her intent. In that moment of uncertainty, tension hung thick in the air like fog rolling over hills at dawn. Would this be a moment of connection or conflict? Every eye was fixed on Lyra as she stood there, an embodiment of hope amidst chaos. The elder's watchful eyes. From his vantage point at a distance, the elder watched intently as Lyra dared to cross boundaries that many would shy away from. He felt a mix of pride and anxiety swell within him. Perhaps this young girl could spark something new, a dialogue instead of a battle. As Lyra continued her silent plea for understanding, other children began to inch forward beside her, drawn by her bravery yet held back by fear of what might happen next. They were all aware that this moment could change everything for Elysium. The elder's heart raced as he silently prayed for peace, for understanding rather than destruction, for humanity's arrival not to mark an end, but rather a beginning where two worlds could learn from one another. A new dawn. As night fell over Elysium once more and stars twinkled overhead like distant watchers bearing witness to this monumental event, hope flickered within each heart present, an ember waiting for wind to ignite it into flame. Would Lyra's courage lead them toward cooperation or conflict? Only time would tell if humanity's arrival would bring storms or sow seeds for unity among stars long divided by fear and misunderstanding. In those moments filled with uncertainty yet brimming with potential for change, Elysium stood at a crossroads. The path ahead shrouded in mystery, but illuminated by courage shining brightly against darkness lurking just beyond reach. And so began their journey into an unknown future, a dance between worlds where every heartbeat echoed with possibilities yet unseen. First contact. The air crackled with anticipation on Elysium as the colossal human ship settled onto the planet's surface. The metallic behemoth, a stark contrast to the lush greenery surrounding it, loomed like a dark omen against the backdrop of vibrant colors. The alien children, still reeling from the elder's warnings, felt a mix of fear and curiosity as they stood shoulder to shoulder with their families, eyes wide with wonder and trepidation. The moment of truth. As the dust began to settle around the ship, the humans emerged one by one, their figures cloaked in strange armor that glinted under Elysium's twin suns. The elder stood at the forefront of the crowd, his heart pounding as he prepared to face the unknown. He had warned them of this moment, the arrival of beings who could reshape their world forever. The first human stepped forward, raising a hand in what seemed to be a gesture of peace. His voice boomed across the clearing. Though the words were unintelligible to the aliens, the elder felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. Communication would be their first challenge. Would these beings understand their plight? Would they come in peace or hostility? Lyra's brave step. In that tense moment, Lyra felt an inexplicable urge to act. Despite her small stature and youthful innocence, she stepped forward, her heart racing. She raised her own hand in response, mimicking the human's gesture. The crowd gasped softly. Her bravery was both inspiring and terrifying. First contact. The air crackled with anticipation on Elysium as the colossal human ship settled onto the planet's surface. The metallic behemoth, a stark contrast to the lush greenery surrounding it, loomed like a dark omen against the backdrop of vibrant colors. The alien children, still reeling from the elders' warnings, felt a mix of fear and curiosity as they stood shoulder to shoulder with their families, eyes wide with wonder and trepidation. The moment of truth. As the dust began to settle around the ship, the humans emerged one by one, their figures cloaked in strange armor that glinted under Elysium's twin suns. The elder stood at the forefront of the crowd, his heart pounding as he prepared to face the unknown. He had warned them of this moment, the arrival of beings who could reshape their world forever. The first human stepped forward, raising a hand in what seemed to be a gesture of peace. His voice boomed across the clearing, though the words were unintelligible to the aliens. The elder felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. Communication would be their first challenge. Would these beings understand their plight? Would they come in peace or hostility? Lyra's brave step. In that tense moment, Lyra felt an inexplicable urge to act. Despite her small stature and youthful innocence, she stepped forward, her heart racing. She raised her own hand in response, mimicking the human's gesture. The crowd gasped softly. Her bravery was both inspiring and terrifying. As Lyra approached the human, she felt all eyes upon her, her fellow children's gazes filled with admiration and fear. The elder watched closely, torn between pride and worry. He knew that this encounter could go in countless directions. Lyra's courage might either bridge a gap or widen a chasm. The human paused, tilting his head slightly as if trying to understand her intent. Lyra took a deep breath, her mind racing for a way to convey her message without words. She pointed to her heart, and then gestured toward the expanse of Elysium, their home filled with beauty and life. An unexpected response to Lyra's surprise. The human knelt down to her level, his visor reflecting the sunlight in a dazzling display. He reached out slowly, extending his hand toward her. The crowd held its breath as Lyra hesitated for just a moment before taking his hand in hers, a small yet monumental gesture that echoed through both species. In that instant, something shifted in the atmosphere. A sense of calm washed over them, like a gentle breeze sweeping through the fields of Elysium. The elder observed closely. Perhaps this was the beginning of understanding rather than conflict. The human spoke again, this time softer and slower, as if trying to communicate despite the language barrier. Lyra focused intently on his tone and body language, searching for any sign of hostility or aggression. To her relief, there was none. He seemed genuinely curious about her. A bridge between worlds. As more humans emerged from their ship, they began to gather around Lyra and the first man. The atmosphere shifted from one of tension to cautious curiosity. The elder sensed this change and decided it was time to step forward himself. "Greetings," he said slowly in their common tongue, a language learned from ancient texts that had survived countless generations. "We are Elysian." His voice carried authority, but also warmth as he addressed both his people and the newcomers. The humans exchanged glances among themselves before one stepped forward, a woman with bright eyes who appeared to be leading them. "We come in peace," she said slowly, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "We seek knowledge and understanding." Lyra's heart soared at these words. Perhaps they could find common ground after all. She felt emboldened by this unexpected turn of events and turned back to look at her fellow children who watched in awe. Sharing stories. As discussions began between the two groups, Lyra found herself drawn into conversations with other human children who had stepped forward alongside their parents. They shared stories about their worlds, tales filled with adventure and discovery that sparked excitement within her. One boy named Ethan spoke animatedly about Earth, their home planet filled with towering mountains and vast oceans teeming with life. "We have creatures that fly high above," he said enthusiastically, "and others that swim deep below." Lyra listened intently as he described vibrant forests filled with trees that touched the sky and cities bustling with activity. She shared tales of Elysium, its shimmering lakes and fields bursting with colors unseen elsewhere. As they exchanged stories, barriers began to dissolve. Laughter echoed through the clearing as both groups found joy in their shared experiences. The elder's wisdom. Meanwhile, the elder observed from a distance, but felt hopeful for what lay ahead. He had always believed in the power of knowledge and understanding. Perhaps this encounter would prove that not all visitors brought destruction. He stepped closer again when he noticed some tension returning among certain members of both groups. Fear still lingered beneath their excitement. "Let us not forget our past," he said gently but firmly. "While we share stories today, we must remain vigilant." The humans nodded solemnly. They understood all too well that history was often marred by conflict and misunderstanding. The elder continued speaking about their ancestors' tales, stories filled with both triumphs and tragedies that shaped Elysium's path through time. A shared future. As day turned into night on Elysium, stars began twinkling above like distant guardians watching over this fragile moment between two worlds. The air was thick with possibility, a chance for cooperation rather than conflict. Lyra glanced around at her fellow children, who were now mingling freely with humans. Each laugh shared bridging gaps once thought insurmountable. She felt an overwhelming sense of hope swell within her heart. Perhaps they could learn from one another instead of allowing fear to dictate their actions. As conversations flowed late into the night beneath shimmering stars overhead, both species found themselves united by curiosity, a desire not just to survive, but thrive together amidst uncertainty. And so began an extraordinary chapter in their intertwined histories, a tale woven together by threads of understanding, where once there had been only fear. The conflict escalates. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the lush landscapes of Elysium, a sense of unease settled over the alien community. The initial excitement of first contact with the humans had given way to a growing tension that crackled in the air like static electricity. The elder, who had once felt hope blossoming from Lyra's brave gesture, now sensed a storm brewing on the horizon. Whispers of doubt. In the days following their first encounter, the humans and aliens began to interact more frequently. However, not all exchanges were filled with laughter and curiosity. Whispers of doubt spread through Elysium like wildfire. Some elders voiced concerns about the humans' true intentions, recalling tales of destruction from distant worlds. "What if they come to conquer us?" one elder murmured during a gathering. "What if they are not as peaceful as they claim?" The children, including Lyra, felt the weight of these worries pressing down on them. They had tasted the sweetness of connection, but now it felt overshadowed by fear. Lyra often found herself staring at the stars, wondering if they were truly safe, or if humanity's arrival would bring chaos instead. The gathering storm. One evening, as twilight descended upon Elysium, a sudden alarm rang through the community, a sound that sent shivers down spines and called everyone to attention. The elder gathered the children and their families in the central square, where anxious faces turned toward him for guidance. "Listen closely," he said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "We have detected unusual activity near our borders." He gestured toward the northern horizon, where dark shapes moved against the backdrop of fading light. "We must remain vigilant." Lyra's heart raced as she exchanged worried glances with her friends. The elder continued, "We cannot ignore the possibility that some humans may not share their companions' peaceful intentions." The atmosphere thickened with tension as everyone absorbed his words. A fractured unity. The following days were marked by increased patrols around Elysium's borders. While some humans remained friendly and eager to learn about Elysian culture, others seemed more interested in exploring resources and technology. This division among humans did not go unnoticed by the aliens. Lyra and her friends often overheard conversations filled with suspicion and fear. "What if they take our lands?" one child whispered to another. "What if they want our water?" These thoughts echoed in Lyra's mind. She had witnessed firsthand how quickly fear could turn into hostility. One day, while wandering near a glimmering lake, Lyra stumbled upon a group of human explorers examining strange plants and minerals. She watched from a distance as they collected samples without permission, an act that ignited her anger and fear. A call for action. That evening, Lyra gathered her friends to discuss what they had seen. "We need to tell the Elder," she urged passionately. "If we don't act now, we might lose everything." Her friends nodded in agreement. They could no longer sit idly by while tensions escalated. When they approached the Elder with their concerns, he listened intently but sighed heavily. "You are right to be worried," he admitted, "but we must approach this situation with caution." He explained that rash actions could lead to conflict that would endanger both species. "We need to find a way to communicate our fears to the humans," he suggested after a moment of contemplation. "Perhaps we can arrange a meeting between our leaders." The meeting of leaders. Days later, under a sky painted with hues of orange and purple, representatives from both sides gathered at a neutral ground, a serene valley surrounded by ancient trees that had witnessed countless stories unfold over millennia. Lyra stood beside the Elder as he addressed both groups, the aliens clad in their vibrant colors, and the humans adorned in their metallic gear. The atmosphere was tense. Each side eyed one another warily, unsure of what this meeting would bring. "Today," began the Elder, his voice carrying authority and hope, "we stand at a crossroads. A chance for understanding or conflict." He gestured toward the humans' leader, a tall woman named Commander Hayes, who stepped forward with determination etched on her face. "We come in peace," Commander Hayes declared firmly but kindly. "But we also seek resources for our people." Her honesty resonated through the crowd. It was clear that both sides had needs that could potentially clash. A tipping point. As discussions continued, it became evident that misunderstandings ran deep on both sides. While some humans sought cooperation, others were driven by greed and ambition, an unsettling truth that echoed through Lyra's mind like a haunting melody. Suddenly, an argument erupted between two factions within the human group, one advocating for collaboration while another pushed for domination over Elysium's rich resources. The tension escalated rapidly. Voices rose in anger as accusations flew back and forth. Lyra felt her heart race as she watched this chaos unfold before her eyes. The very thing she feared most was happening right before her. She turned to her friends. They looked just as frightened as she felt. "Enough," shouted Commander Hayes above the din, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Silence fell over both groups as all eyes turned toward her. She seemed determined to restore order. A moment of clarity. "We cannot let our fears dictate our actions," she continued passionately. "We must work together if we wish to survive this encounter." Her words struck a chord within Lyra. Perhaps there was still hope for unity amidst growing tensions. The Elder stepped forward again, his voice steady yet filled with urgency. "Let us remember why we are here today, to find common ground." He urged both parties. "We must listen to each other's needs and fears." Slowly but surely, dialogue resumed between representatives from both sides. Conversations filled with tentative hope began to emerge amidst lingering distrust. Lyra watched closely as ideas flowed back and forth like a river seeking its course. A fragile peace. As night fell over Elysium once more and stars twinkled brightly above them, like distant guardians watching over this fragile moment between two worlds, Lyra felt an ember of hope ignite within her heart. Perhaps they could find a way forward, a path illuminated by understanding rather than fear, a chance for cooperation instead of conflict. But even as optimism blossomed within her chest, she knew that challenges lay ahead. A delicate balance between trust and caution would shape their future together. And so began an extraordinary chapter in their intertwined histories, a tale woven together by threads of understanding where once there had been only fear. The path ahead. As discussions continued late into the night beneath shimmering stars overhead, both species found themselves united by curiosity, a desire not just to survive, but thrive together amidst uncertainty. Yet lurking beneath this newfound hope was an undeniable truth. Not all hearts beat for peace. Some still yearned for power over others, a reminder that while bridges could be built between worlds, storms could still brew on distant horizons.